Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about Process Manager. Process Manager is a system that gives you lightweight and easy to use process management tools that are integrated with your cloud development platform and your plugin library. We wanted to give you a system that was fairly intelligent, deeply integrated, and easily extendable, while still being, very easy to install and use. So let's get started. We'll type process into our process filter, and we will open up our process designer. Now, there are three main areas in our process design and management. We're going to talk about the process designer in this video. The editors and manager are discussed in another video. This is the first one you should actually review, though. So let's launch the process designer, and up it'll come. We're going to enlarge this a little bit, and we're going to close the logging window as it's not really applicable to anything we're going to do today. Okay, and so the first thing you see here is a drawing surface. We're going to click New, and that's going to create the new process. It doesn't seem like much happened, but a new process was generated. You can also store and fetch these drawings or processes by clicking these items. For instance, you can have a process in your system already, and you can modify it or edit it, or whatever you like to do with that. So this editor is editing process templates. From the template, once it's published, you'll create individual processes and either assign those to people or put them in work queues, and then from there they'll be workflowed out. But this is the template. This is where you're going to design the process, but it isn't where you're going to actually execute the process itself. Okay, so let's look at the process properties. We're going to say test process, and this is my description. And you'll notice it has a published value. Now, if this value is not checked, then the process template will not be usable in the process manager. You have to publish it before it's actually exposed and ready. Expected complete time is where you can take your own metric and inject it here and say, oh, I think this is going to take X number of minutes to complete this process. That's used later when we report out and talk about things that are behind, things that are over schedule, things that have taken too long, things that have completed on time, that kind of stuff. This is also where we set up security for this template. Not everybody can create processes based on different every template. They have to have permission. In here, I'm going to go ahead and load in a template. Templates are basically, you've already set a set of permissions you want for a process, and you don't want to keep having to re-enter that for every new process you create. You can create these as security templates and then load them in, which is what I've done here. One thing to note, though, is the security aspect. Aspect is just another way of saying role, except that these are specific roles within the process engine. You have an editor, an initiator, a manager, and a participant, and then you can create you can bind roles to those so that you have different rights. The aspect is what's going to grant you the ability to do different things. They're pretty easy to understand. Editor allows you to edit a template. Initiator allows you to create an instance of the process and assign it to somebody. A manager gives you certain rights to management functionality. For instance, a manager may close a project or a process before it's done, or may change the state of a process which doesn't conform to the workflow, or may approve or deny certain steps of a process. And a participant is just somebody who's allowed to use the process manager and the process manager wizard, which we'll talk about in the process manager video. The big takeaway, though, is to make sure that you remember to publish your process template, and you remember to at least give an initiator and a participant role in the system, or the template just won't be visible or editable or creatable. Okay, so we've got our new process, and we want to create our first task. So we just push that button and select task. There we go. Easy enough. Now, tasks are containers. We're going to talk about them in a little bit more detail in just a second, but we want to keep the concept clear. Tasks must be completed in workflow order. and all subtasks in a task must be complete before a task can move on to the next task or the next item in the workflow. Let's go look at our task properties. So you can see here we have a name, so we'll say task 1, and some description. We also have a couple of things here. First thing to note is that it has an auto mark. This means if I enter this task and we start doing subtasks in the in that task, do we want to go ahead and auto mark those tasks or subtasks as complete when the user has opened up those particular plugins? In other words, when they've closed the plugin. Basically, we were saying, hey, if they've closed this plugin, we will automatically mark it as successfully completed, which is usually the case. And 99% of the time, that's great. We also need to mark our starting task or our ending task, so the system knows where it should start the workflow and where it should end the workflow. This time in minutes is just an estimating time of how long this particular task should take. Adding up all the task times and all the subtask times will give you what the actual workflow should take to execute. Now we have task flags. Now these 4 flags you see are the 4 flags that cannot be changed or deleted. But you can add your own flags. If you have a condition coming out of the task that's specific to that particular task, for instance, we have to call up the vendor and get their tax information because we don't have a process to gather that automatically. Say that's a task flag. We can put that in here. Just add the task flag and it'll become part of this list. You can't edit the flag name, of course, and you cannot delete a system flag. And we're going to stay with the basic systems because honestly, these are usually all you're going to use in a task. Great. Okay, so next we're going to add 2 more tasks. We're going to add task 2, and we're going to add an error task. Okay. So what happens if there's a problem with the task? All right, great. Now we have our basics of a workflow here. We're not going to edit those task properties yet. What we're going to do is now draw our workflow, and this is pretty easy. What we do is we click and this is order is important here. You click the originating task, and you click where you want the task to end up, and then you hit the task, add a task link. Now what it's going to come up with are the flags you've defined in the originating task. Okay, that task defines the different flags, and if the checked and unchecked boxes matches the state of the current copy of the task that's running during this whole workflow process, then this is the route, this is the workflow path that the system's going to take. So I'm going to say, okay, well the task completed, no issues, go this way, and it's created this. This connection or link. You can edit this link at any time. And really it's just looking for some flags, right? So when the wizard plays back this workflow, it's going to wait until all the things that this task contain are complete. We'll get to that in just a minute. Once it's done, it's going to evaluate all the flags, and then the user is going to press next step, and then that's when the workflow actually gets prompted to move to the next piece. We're also going to do this. We're going to create another workflow, and we're going to say, oh, well, you know what? 1 or more issues. And now, if this task did not complete correctly, it's going to workflow over to the error task instead of to task. Okay, so another thing we probably want to go do is we want to go to task properties, and we want to say this is an ending task. And we want to come over here and do the same thing to this system. So that the workflow engine knows, hey, this is the terminating point of this workflow. We've either completed those 2 tasks successfully, or we've got an error state and we need to manage that in some other way. So now it's time to talk about what you do in these tasks. So let's do this. We've selected our task, task 1, and now we'll view subtasks. And you know what? I just realized we don't have a good name on this process. So let's do that. Yes. There we go. I just didn't like looking at that. Okay, good. So now we'll go to the subtask, and you're greeted with a blank screen. Now, at this point, what the system is waiting for you to do is to drop plugins into the screen. For instance, I can create alerts or alert response types. It doesn't matter. You can also remove these. And let's go and create something cool. Let's create a string. And let's say a user string type and a user string. So in this task, the user is going to create well, let's do this. Let's remove that. Let's say user string type. So in this case, the task is going to have one step. It's going to have, I want them to create a user string type in the database so that somebody can create some user string that the program is going to use. So what we've done here is we've bound this plugin to this subtask, which is contained in that task. Which means if to extend this system, all you have to do is write plugins. Now we have a whole video series on writing plugins, but they're pretty easy to write and secure, and they are pretty much infinite in the ability to extend things. So if you don't see functionality in our plugin library and you need it to work in this process manager, well, it's pretty easy to write the extensions and have them show up in this library. Now, one thing to be aware of is that, of course, plugins have IDs, and those IDs are secured to roles. So if you don't have the ability to see a particular plugin, then you can't drag and drop it. It won't show up in the subtask library. Also, if the user for the process has the right to execute the process but does not have sufficient rights to see the actual tile and launch it, then they'll be stuck. They won't be able to launch the plugin in order to complete the subtask, and therefore they won't be able to move in the workflow. So let's look at the subtask properties. What do we have here? Well, first we have the plugin ID and the tile that's being used to represent it. And we also have a subtask name. So let's give it one. Let's create a user string type. And then you come in here and go, great. Now, required means that this task must be completed before this subtask must be completed before the task can proceed through its workflow. Automark means if the person launches this plugin and then closes it, it will automatically be marked as successfully run. You also have a PowerShell script that you can attach here, and you can automatically run it when this tile is launched. This is a whole nother issue here where you have to have the PowerShell permissions and you have to have the permissions to the subscription. But if you want to, you can store a series of PowerShell scripts that you'd like to execute during a process, have them auto run, and essentially these subtasks will automatically run for you each time they click on a button. So it's pretty nice to store any automation or set of scripts you'd like to run in certain situations that you want to make sure are completely automated and that somebody else can execute and then mark it as done. Okay. All right. So we'll hit OK. Now we have task 1 due. Let's do task 2 here. And let's see, view subtask, and we're going to put user strings, and we're going to take that, and we're going to say subtask properties, and we're going to say oh, well, actually, okay, great. So basically we're saying, hey, create this user string once you've created a type for it. Excellent. All right. Now we come here to our error tasks, and we'll view subtask, and we'll go, we'll stop here. For the error task, we're not going to have any utilities to open up. We're just going to create task properties and say, report this error to a manager. To a manager. Okay, and it's an ending task. Great. Okay. All right, we're going to store this, and there we go. It's stored as test process. Excellent. You can have any number of subtasks in a task, and those subtasks do not have to be executed in any particular order. So if you have tiles that you want to be opened in a particular sequence, you need to create different tasks for them. Once this is complete, you can then come over to task properties, or I'm sorry, process properties, mark it as published, and hit OK. Let's store it. And now the test process is ready and able to create new processes and workflows from this particular drawing. Let's also take a look a little bit at the drawing tools and configuration tool. Now, don't be limited by the way you're drawing your tasks out. You can be very creative. Basically, we have a subset of what would be normally considered Visio type design. Elements here. We can change the color of things. We can change the styles. You can apply templates. We have color selectors, so you can go really crazy with how you design things. You can change the way the text is formatted, etc., etc. You can export this information into a PNG file so that you can give it to whoever, and you can also print this out. That's pretty much a standard print dialog, but there you go. You can change the view, and it also has a bunch of design functionality, including changing paper size and whatnot. Also, this doesn't have to be one page big. This can be very large and complicated processes. As you drag them to the edges, the system will grow larger and will shrink if you don't need the space. Okay, and lastly, let's talk about our cleanup function. The cleanup function is there in case the data seems to not be configured correctly, or something doesn't seem to flow right for you. You can push that button, and up here will come your Process Explorer. And under Process Explorer, you can actually drill down and look at the different links, the different definitions, how the system believes it's going to work as it's running. This will allow you to see if you've got an errant flag or you've got something wrong with your design. It allows you to debug into the memory of the system at a very fine detail. So that's it for our Process Manager template creator editor. Basically, it's a very lightweight system. It's infinitely extendable, and it's fairly logical on how it does things. One of the strong points of this process manager is that it takes advantage of all the plugins that are published into this system. So there's a central place where people can extend process management and then consume process management based on your application. There doesn't have to be a separate thing that deals with that. It's all in one place. So I would encourage you to read watch the Process Manager and the Process Editor's videos to get more information. But that's about it. Thanks for watching.